Huh? Kaboom.
Bum. You guys had recommended this video, finally some good news. So I wanted to react to it. It was an Asmongold react to Yongya. So let's see what they have to say. What is the good news? Why is it so blurry?
One of the greatest conversations of this era regarding media is surrounding the digital format.
Oh man, I got God. It was Asmon's fault, not mine. Not mine. He was the one that was having the blurry resolution. Okay.
This has been a huge problem for, I think, like, I think it's becoming more of an issue. And I think, ironically, NFTs were serving as a way to innovate on this idea of digital ownership.
Yep.
It's just that they didn't provide any real value. But the concept of digital ownership, I think, is becoming more important every single day.
Yeah, they were capitalizing on the fact that it was a new idea that people thought was, like, people had never considered before. So they were capitalizing on, like, the FOMO of being the first one to it. Unironically, it's kind of like with the stocks that we just talked about with, like, Ubisoft, where people are like, ooh, we're on the next big thing that's going to make a lot of money. So we have to hurry up and invest in them, you know? So we're the first one to the punch.
How we are becoming more and more of a completely digital world. We're starting to see physical media disappear. Brick and mortar stores are selling them less, and companies in general
GameStop sells
are
Funko
creating
Pops.
less physical versions of
Why you gotta bring up Funko Pops, Asmon? Oh, that's a whole other thing. That's just
their products, because they prefer the convenience of digital in the way that there's no qualms about distribution.
Yeah.
You can just put it up on a server and have people download it from there, from the comfort of their homes. There's
There's more control too. You've got to keep that in mind. Is that the publisher and the developer can control more of what the user experience is if they can, if the user doesn't have, like, the game themselves.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. But I guess the weird thing about this is, right, now I'm younger than Asmongold, obviously, but I can't remember a time where I really felt like I physically owned a game. Is that weird to say? Yeah, you still have to, like, download patches. And, like I think of, like, MMOs, like World of Warcraft. When there's a new expansion, it's not like you could play the old version of the games, right? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like this has been happening for a very long time. Primarily when I was little, I played, like, a little bit of WoW. I never really felt like I owned it because, like, the second they would have, like, you know, even when they had the disc for the expansion, it was like you still had to play a subscription. Yeah, maybe it's because I'm too young, or, like, I also didn't, again, I didn't really play games till later. That I didn't really experience feeling like I ever really physically owned a game.
less time and money spent on the distribution aspect, and then consumers will tend to favor digital because it is also more convenient for them. They don't have to go out of their way to go to a store and purchase a physical product. But at the same time, there are those people who do value physical media because they recognize the dangers of an all-digital world, because at the end of the day, your ability to re-download that digital media with all the DRMs involved and all the license protections and the like, all of that relies on companies being able to continuously host for the long term the content that they allege that you have bought and owned.
Yeah. So he's talking about the same thing I am, which is like, it's always kind of felt like, you know, them updating it and licenses and stuff like that has made it so even when you had like a physical copy, it was still like they owned it and controlled it.
By physical, you do have that in the palm of your hand, and they can't take it away from you unless
I think it's the fact that they can take it away from you. I think it's a huge issue. The fact that you buy something and then you're not entitled to what you own.
Yeah.
Like if
I think the best example of this actually is oh gosh, sorry, brain fart. What are they called? Like if I wanted to play an old Pokemon game, I would need it. Thank you, emulator. Sorry. My brain was thinking emulator, but I could not. It's like feeling like you own something after support has ended for it. Does that make sense? And what's weird about that, I guess, is maybe it's not a good example because it's not physical media. but it's the closest thing to feeling like you own something, even if the company kind of discards it. At least for me, like me as a kid, that's the closest example to that I have. It's something that theoretically can't be taken away, right? I guess what I was gonna say, I'm not saying that they're a perfect one-to-one example of physically owning something. The fact that they're getting rid of those as well also, I think, makes people nervous about the physical media being removed, because it seems like they just really don't want you to have games that, like, they're not profiting off of anyway, right? It's so weird. They're, like, trying to control the fact that you previously consumed this or have access to it, which just seems so weird. It is, like, a weird control thing that you're like, why do you need that?
I think that if a company can take your money for something, they have to give you something in return.
Break in. These are the questions that we're asking, and another major question is, will legislation ever catch up? Will they recognize the dangers of an all-digital future and realize how companies are selling digital products as if they're things that you own, when in reality that's not the case? You're more like renting them, and sure, it's for the long term, but eventually the license for your digital product can expire.
Well, and it's not only that you're renting them, it's that all arbitration and rights that you have over that rental is completely decided by the company.
Yep.
So, like,
this makes me think of, oh my gosh, I actually found it from Asmongold's stream. There was a game that he played that ended up not doing well, and then they completely changed the game. And I think that it was more consumer friendly, but it's like they went from like one type of game to another. It's weird. It's like if a game wants to change tomorrow from like a looter shooter to like something else, it's like if you already bought it for $60, you don't really get to not you don't get to have the $60 back, right? You know what I mean? It's just weird how technically they can do whatever they want. They're not liable to like not change their product entirely, even, I think, right? So it's just weird.
You can say, oh, well, it's just a license, but that license removes any rights that you had. So it's basically a way for them to sidestep having to deal with tons of consumer regulations and protections.
That's what I mean. They get away with not having, it's like, oh, they already bought it. Another example, but games that will suddenly become pay to win later on, like after people have played them for a little bit. Have you guys like seen some games like that where they aren't pay to win initially and then they start inserting it into the game after the fact? I feel like that should not be allowed because that's different from the initial product you bought.
Just decide that you no longer own the product that you paid for. Well, it turns out that here in the US and in California specifically,
this is very good.
Legislators have been paying attention to this issue that has been raised more and more, especially throughout the last couple of years and the last couple of months, especially, I feel, with various incidents that have stirred up this conversation.
Yep.
And so right here we have a headline that IGN published on Twitter that reads, California Governor Gavin Newsom has signed a bill into law that will force storefronts to admit that you don't actually own your digitally purchased games, films, and TV shows. You're just licensing them.
I think they should always have to do that because that's literally just like, you're just stating facts right here. Yes, this is a good thing.
Thank fucking God.
The bar was low.
Now, I've said before, I don't think this goes far enough. I think
that's where I'm at. I'm like, this is like just facts. Like it's just telling you what we already know in fine print, right? It's like that should have already been required. It's like buying an apple and them not telling you it's an apple, right? It's like, yeah, they should tell you what the product is.
Buy a game. I don't think that they should be able to take that away from you. They should only be able to take the ability for you to access their live servers away from you, if that makes sense. So, like, if you play an online video game and you cheat, you can't access the online servers because you're cheating. But you still should be able to have access to that game itself.
This is not a law that's being proposed.
I don't know about the cheating thing. I'm probably the wrong one to give an opinion, but I would think that you have to disclose that if you want people to use your product in a certain way, you have to do it. when the person's buying it. You have to disclose, like you cannot use any outside, like, manipulation of the game, right? You can't mod it at all. You have to disclose that. Like, the bare minimum, at least, is you have to disclose that upon purchase. And you can't just change that on the fly, like, 2 months later and be like, oh, we changed the agreement, even though you already bought it.
Are presented.
Yeah,
this is something that's already been
it's
signed and will come into effect in the not so distant future. And while
I think that the best example of this, by the way, is like Elden Ring. Because they're like, yeah, you can use mods, but you can't use them in the multiplayer. I feel like Elden Ring is like literally the best example. You could be Sailor Moon if you want and shoot meteors from the sky, okay? But you can't do it when other players are involved because it makes it unfair. I feel like that's like the best example.
this doesn't stop companies from being able to purchase digital media from your library when they feel like it in the future. It does, at the very least, force them to put out there a certain level of honesty
aware.
that might have their sales suffer, because people will be very clearly informed that you're not actually buying a product and owning it. You're just temporarily renting it, which is a very important distinction. If you go to storefronts right now, they all say that you are able to buy something. You click on the buy button. That is something that you can no longer do if you're a company once this
Because
law...
it's not true. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, and this is why it's such a W. It's because fundamentally, you're not buying it.
Yeah. My only worry, okay, maybe this is really cynical of me, is it's like, is it really going to change anything if instead of buy, it says like purchase or rent? You know what I mean? It's like, maybe it's gonna like, whoa, it's gonna shake people up at first. But every game is gonna use whatever new term they think is the legal term, whether it's like rent or some alternate like version for buy. You know what I mean? I'm guessing they won't even say rent. I feel like they're gonna come up with a word that's technically not wrong, that still sounds good. You know what I mean? And I don't know how much it's gonna change. And maybe that's just me being overly skeptical.
You're only getting a license.
Comes into effect
This will change
if
nothing.
your product is
It will
digital, and
change
there's
people's
absolutely
awareness
no
of it.
guarantee that you'll be able to allow
And I think that, like, once you change people's awareness of it, you make people more willing to look at that becoming a problem. Because now that it's defined in a way that consumers feel like is more restrictive and less free, now consumers will be more reluctant to do that, and I think that they'll expect more from the company.
See, I disagree with this, all right? And maybe this will get me some heat. I think it is absolutely good. This is not a bad thing. This is a good thing. It's a step in the right direction, and no matter how small, it is good. However, I don't think it's actually going to be that monumental, because, like, okay, let's say it says you're going to rent something, and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe this is saying rent. Now I'm going to be really skeptical, right? And so you go to another game, and it says the same thing. It's going to become a norm, because there's no game out there that actually provides something else besides renting it. So, like, how would you act upon this, right? It would make sense if there was games out there that you physically did own still, but there isn't any. That's why I don't think it's going to do much.
Yeah, there's more aware, more combative. Yeah, now people are more aware of it. Exactly.
to access that in perpetuity, and you don't allow people to download that software in a way that can be accessed forever, regardless of whether you have an internet connection or not,
Probably
without servers having to check in whether you have a license, whatever. That's why GOG took a minute to comment. Well, because as you know, GOG sells all of their games DRM free, meaning that once you download something from GOG, that digital file doesn't have to check in with anything. That digital file is everything you need to access the contents of that game, and you can, copy and paste it.
See, that's what I was just about to say. I was going to say, if there is someone competing that does offer these things, and it is big enough that people enjoy them, they're going to capitalize on it, right? That would be the biggest W here.
Move it around however you like.
Thank God.
If GOG goes down, but you still have that file you downloaded from GOG, you get to keep it forever, and it will
never...
This
is something that not even Steam does. I don't use it, but it's
never
respectable.
Become sort of...
See, this is the problem, though, right? Nobody uses it. I never heard about it until today. I think that's the biggest issue, is there has to be a very large There has to be something very, very big that a lot of people play that offers this. And then I think it could be an impact, but this is just my opinion.
Product that you can no longer access. GOG's downloaded games will never cease to function as a result of a company pulling a certain product from the store. More specifics about the law can be found in this Verge article, whose headline reads, California's new law forces digital stores to admit you're just licensing content, not buying it. But before we discuss that, you know what's more important than protecting your digital library? Protecting your personal information. Which brings us to the sponsor of today's video, Delete Me, a subscription service dedicated to protecting your personal information and keeping it private. In this digital age when data...
I'm actually really surprised that there's so much of an information economy, because I feel like it's crazy that you need all of these like websites and ads. I feel like this should be illegal. Maybe I'm being crazy, but...
No, you're not. I could go on all day. A lot of the reason I don't talk about drama and stuff like that is because I feel like a lot of times you get a lot of insight about like stuff going on and stuff you need to be informed about, right? And then there's like no call to action. There's like literally nothing that you can do. And so a lot of times I'm like, well, if I can't do anything about it but sit and wallow in it, then why would I cover it? I know that's like a really sad way of looking at it. But it's like if I can't do anything impactful with this information, then like why am I bothering, right? I don't know.
The fact that all of this stuff is made public information and people are commodifying everybody's personal information, that's like, I don't see this as being good for like the public.
Brokers are constantly selling your personal data to shady entities. It is more important than ever to be proactive about your digital footprint. And that's where Delete Me comes in. It is a
in
one-stop...
In my opinion, there needs to be actual laws that you can't do this, but there isn't. And I don't know how, like, what you would need to do for that to happen.
Shop for deleting your personal information from search results and hundreds of data broker websites. Everything from your name, age, past and present addresses, photos, email, phone numbers, relatives, social media, occupation, marital status, property value, so on and so forth. Information that nefarious actors could try to take advantage of. As someone who is a public figure and the potential target of harassment, of scams, of doxing, identity theft, stalking, you name it, what Delete Me offers is actually pretty invaluable. What's particularly great about Delete Me is that it's constantly active. After you get set up, it will monitor sites and remove your data as needed.
Don't get me wrong, okay? On the other hand, the common person has more ways of combating this, right? Like, just like indie developers have more power than they ever did to make games by themselves to compete with, like, industry giants, right? People have more tools than ever before from, you know, other people just like them that make these things to combat these things.
The privacy report every 7 days to keep you fully updated. You can also make your own custom requests to have your information removed from specific sources by Delete Me's experts. If digital privacy is a top priority for you like it is for me, then protect your data with Delete Me by using my link, joindeleteme.com/Yong20.
So there's actually been like a new type of scam that's happening, and it's being made with AI. And like, I know Thor talked about it a little bit, Pirate Software. And it's something that's common now, and like a couple of other guys have talked about it publicly.
Is he going to talk about the one where people pretend to be somebody else?
Is that people will use AI versions of a person's voice to scam their family members into giving them money.
Yep.
It's actually crazy.
And use my code YONG20 to get 20% off checkout with family plans available as well. All of this can be found in the description and comment section below. So it is further stated down here that California Governor Gavin Newsom has signed a law, AB 2426, to combat disappearing purchases of digital games, movies, music, and ebooks. This law is meant to cover digital...
I didn't realize this was covering more than games. Hold up. No, this is great. That's more than just games. That's good.
Media.
I didn't realize it was all digital content.
Even better, it'll force digital storefronts to tell customers they're just getting a license to use the digital media rather than suggesting they actually own it.
I hope that the outcome of this will be that it makes consumers more aware of the fact that the relationship that they have with the people that are purchasing things, that they're buying things from, is completely unfair. Because I think that really the reason why the companies want to do this is because it it makes it to where the user doesn't have certain degrees of consumer protection.
Yep.
And they're not able to exercise autonomy over what they spend money on.
Yep.
So the first step to that is making people aware that it's happening.
Yeah, I agree. This is a good first step because it's also like something that is putting in regulation against these things going unknown. This is like the first, I think, big legislation that would go through, right? So I feel like this is very good.
Law comes
that's what's
into
happening
effect
now.
next year in 2025, which is not that far away. So we're going to start seeing a paradigm shift in the way shops, digital storefronts list their games and what words they use for the purchase button that can no longer say purchase or buy. If it has some kind of DRM on it, if there's no guarantee, you can just download it and keep it forever. It'll ban digital stores from using terms like buy or purchase unless they inform customers that they're not getting unrestricted access to whatever they're buying. Storefronts will have to tell customers they're getting a license that can be revoked. Companies that break
This is really good wordage too. Another thing that's a huge win is they really make it very specific. Like, you cannot do these things, because like if they used vague terminology, I could see people kind of loopholing around, and I still think they will to a degree, right? I think they're gonna like do things like add this game to library. I don't think they're gonna ever use the word rent because they know that doesn't sound good. But I think the terminology here is also a huge W.
The rule could be fined for false advertising because
Thank
that's
God.
precisely what's been happening for the masses out there.
Thank
Who
God.
just kind of interpret the buy button as literally buying it and
Man.
keeping it forever and don't really
Oh,
have the
man.
full scope of what that is technologically speaking, where companies can revoke that whenever they want.
Yep.
You know, they were given the false sense of security that this digital product will stay in their library ad infinitum. So this law coming into effect,
Well, it's not even the false promise. It should be the expectation. There's no functional reason why a consumer that spends money on a video game like Elden Ring, for example, shouldn't be able to play that game outside of like whatever program that they're using to play the game with, like Steam or something.
I agree with him here, but I also feel like I would have no idea how to draw this line in the sand because I feel like this has been plotted out and slowly, come full circle to like a thing that is normalized for so many years that I don't even know what that would look like. Like, maybe it's just me. I'm just trying to figure out how you would even do that. Single player games I could think of if they never updated them, but like a lot of the times it's like game softwares, graphics cards are so much more convoluted now that a lot of times it's like I would rather have the updates, and if they, gave them to me and like could never change them, I don't know. I have no idea what this would look like. I feel like gaming and software and everything is so much more complicated. But I'm just a gamer casual Andy, okay? So there might be ways I'm not, I don't know, but yeah.
Something like that, right? Like, there's no benefit to the user that happens. And I feel like, again, all of the reason for doing this is just so they can sidestep a lot of consumer rights and consumer advocacy.
think is a great first step into protecting customers from
makes
the
people
kind
aware.
of false advertising we've seen from companies, and protecting folks from the idea that digital purchases are permanent, which is just an idea that doesn't exist, and informing customers of what the consequences of an all-digital era are. Now, the reason GOG can say,
I think informing people is like the forefront of this, and that's great.
Is because this new law won't apply to stores that offer permanent offline downloads, which is exactly...
That's fucking right. There you go. And so this, again, now what they've done is they've created a cultural differentiator between companies that are doing something that is in the consumer's best interest versus in the company's best interest.
Yep. Ooh, they're going to be fined for false advertising. That's good. I think that's good. Putting a clear, like, not just like you can't do this, but like you will actually be fined if you do this.
And it has to be defined by the company under threat of law.
Yep.
Thank fucking God.
This is the biggest part of the W, right? It's like the law has come in for the first time to crack down on like something digital like this. I don't think that's ever happened. So this is really monumental, even if it's small.
This is why you have government, by the way.
Downloads, which is exactly what GOG offers. Once you download an installer for a game, There are no conditions involved in being able to use it. And I'm willing to bet you a lot of what inspired legislators to hop on this and sign a bill for a law like this has to do with Sony and Ubisoft and similar companies who once upon a time did risk or did fully execute the removal of digital content from people's libraries without their consent.
I think that,
Yes.
well, I think he's right, number one. And I think also, like, we've had digital marketplaces for long enough now that the idea of a game going offline and nobody being able to play it, although you spent money on it, I feel like it's common enough for people to have a shared experience with that. And
No, that is a good point. Okay. I had a thought of that. I thought that, like, my thought was that enough people think this is normal that they expect it, but also, on the other hand, it's like enough people have had this experience and don't like it. That shared sentiment can be used in the other direction.
understand why it's bad.
Yeah.
I think that's the big reason. It's because now more people have had that experience. And I think also, like, with games, that's only one instance. Like, so I'll go on Spotify. There's a lot of times, like this one right here. Can I play this one anymore? The content's not available.
What? I didn't even know this happens. I don't really use Spotify. I use YouTube more often. Why does that happen? Does the creator take it off? It's licensing? It also happens on YouTube. Oh, they expire and are not renewed.
So this is a Billy Idol song, and I can't listen to this song on Spotify. And there are songs that are grayed out. Like, you guys have this on, like, your playlist, for example? Yeah, exactly. Oh, here's
I don't know
another one
what you
here.
would do to combat this, right? Because I feel like licensing is its own, like, it's its own mini boss in this whole thing. It's also why you don't get the same soundtrack on GTA San Andreas that you used to. Oh man, I wouldn't even know how you would. I don't know how you would fight this.
Content's not available. It was at some point, now it's not. Happens all the time. Shit pisses me off. Exactly, it does. And so I think the reason why it's happening now is that more people have experienced this, so they understand why it's a problem.
Okay, so this is just a question, okay? So let's say about like this worked 120%. This is just in my fantasy world brain, all right? So let's say you like I don't know, Spotify's like, okay, we don't want to break any rules. We're gonna make it so you can physically own everything and not just rent it. How do they do that? There's not even like the freaking PlayStation doesn't even have a way to insert a physical product into it anymore. Unless you pay extra, right? Like, I don't even... Like, are we gonna have to invent something past the Blu-ray for physical ownership? Like, do you see what I'm saying? Do you guys think that in a perfect world that the perfect answer would be permanent ownership digitally? It's just a question.
It's been a problem for a long time, but now, like, the degree of, like, consumer literacy is higher, so people expect it.
Without them being fully aware that companies even had that capability. I think one of the biggest movements that really drew eyes to the dangers of an all-digital future is Stop Killing Games.
Yep.
This is the website right here.
Oh, yeah. I saw this. I thought this was a very good initiative, yeah.
You can see already just from
36%.
the number of signatures on this European Citizens Initiative petition.
That's crazy.
How much this movement has
That's
kind of come
great.
to the public limelight. 362,169 signatures, with the goal here seemingly
Nice.
being to garner over 1 million signatures. And the goal...
I love when public initiatives like are successful like that. Like, I think it's really good when the public is that involved in something. I think that's a really good sign.
This movement isn't just to have companies disclose
Makes
that
me
you
hopeful.
don't own things that you buy digitally, and for companies to disclose that you don't own anything that you buy digitally, but to end this idea of companies even being able to pull products from your library without your consent as a result of whatever. Their games go offline, or they don't feel like selling their games anymore, their license expiring, whatever. It doesn't matter what the excuse is. There shouldn't be this idea that a product can just fully disappear from the face of the earth forever. I mean, that is just
The problem, and this is like really one of the big issues.
You should only own something digitally, just like physically. Let me tell you why I think that's wrong, or not as easy to do. What about when, okay, so you guys know how like software, hardware, it all gets updated, right? Graphics cards, right? When you get like a new PC, right? Cause yours doesn't work for, new games anymore, whatever, right? If you digitally own that game, what if it doesn't work on the new PC? It's kind of like they would have to keep innovating on it with future tech then, right? If you wanted to own it in the same way you did physically. Or do you just mean, like, they would have to create compatibility is what I mean. They would have to invest in that, right? Or do you just think it's okay if, like, you gotta, only be able to play that on your N64 if you have one? Would you guys just think that another person would create an emulator and the companies would be expected to be okay with that? Or do you think that they are responsible for creating something that would be an emulation? I guess that's my question. Like, does this mean that, like, they would be... Do you see what I'm saying? Just being okay with it? Okay, yeah. Okay, I agree.
And I think that, like, this is one of the points that I think Thor brought up in criticism of the Stop Killing Games that I think is very valid, is that you cannot require companies to maintain a game indefinitely. Because then nobody would ever make a game because you're writing a blank check, right?
Yeah, that's what I was kind of trying to say in a slightly different way, right? It's like, well, what if you made a single player game and then, like, technology updates and graphics cards get better and all those things, and now it's like you can't really play that game by just downloading it because it doesn't work on new tech the same. You know what I mean? It's like, are you is the company expected to infinitely make it so it's able to be played on new tech, or do you just say that they have to be okay with other people making emulators of it? That was what I was trying to say.
I think he's totally right about that.
That's what I was trying to say.
I think that if you're not providing the service and somebody else makes a private server, I don't think you should be able to shut them down. If you're not providing the server and you're not doing it anymore, you should not have the ability to, by force of law with copyright, shut down that server.
I agree.
I feel like that's my only real opinion with Stop Killing Games. Everything else to me is debatable.
I completely agree with that. It's like, if you're not profiting from it, planning to re-release it, like if there's illegitimate versions of it on emulators and you release a brand new version of it, I feel like you should be allowed to take it off the emulator, because you're like, no, we want like only the actual official version out there, especially if it's a multiplayer game, right?
Variety. Well, it should work as if it's abandonware. Like, that's the parallel that I would use in order to, like, base my argument off of it. Company's sole purpose is to gain money, but they want you to be happy giving them more money. Yeah, well, that's the thing. But that's not the user's purpose. Nobody was asking devs to hold open servers. Just give their server code.
That's a good one, right? Some online games allow you to run your own private servers. Ooh. Okay, what about this? They allow you to run your private servers, but they charge again for remaking the game better, and you can either choose to play on the private servers or you can have the new version they think is better. That would never happen, but I feel like that'd be great.
Down. I don't even think that they should have to give their server code.
It wouldn't happen though. Okay, I know.
They should not be able to stop people from recreating the game.
I'm in my own copium brain,
to preservation of gaming history.
You guys want some of what I'm having.
Also a detriment
my
to
glass is half full.
who feel like obviously that when they buy something, they should have more say on how that that product is able to be accessed. And
I really like the way he said that, because it really puts into perspective the fact that we as consumers have all the power.
Yep.
And if we decide collectively that we own video games now, and we can't, like, you can't just tell us that we're licensing them and then take them away from us randomly, we can just get together and make a law, and then the companies can't do that.
I think he's right, but I also think there's this other problem on the other side of things where it's like, if every game is like this and nobody's ever seen anything different, they won't know they even have that option. Does that make sense? I think the bigger thing that would make this super impactful is kind of like the example earlier in the video where, like, if there is a big company or an indie game that's really good, you know, because we've seen indie games pop off and have, like, really good success, right? If they made it so that you could own their game and that became a norm in indie game spaces, I feel like it would screw them over even if they tried to make it a norm. Just like with indie games, how people are able to see that great games can be made and not cost $60 or $70. I feel like that will make it so people see, like, well, this company does it and they have a great game and I'm allowed to own it. And so, like, I'm not going to buy, you know, I'm not going to rent your game. If they have a clear example of someone else not doing it, then I think it'll really, really, like, make it so that people just won't do it, even if it's not. Even if they legally get away with the other thing, people just won't go for it. They'll just buy the ones that don't do that.
Done.
Like, make it not a norm.
It's actually that easy. So it's completely possible for us to do this. Yeah, gamers rise up. Yeah, and if you get enough people together, you can do that.
Like, imagine if an indie company said, hey, we want you guys to physically own this game. We're going to need, like, extra money. So you could either digitally rent the game or you can buy it. If you want to rent it, it's $20. If you want to own it, we're going to need $40 in order to, like, have more assets to do that. I feel like people would. I feel like a lot of people would have no problem with that.
You know, if a game goes offline, you
No
know, you should allow people to make their own private servers, still retain the digital files in their library and not have that forcibly removed. Your library should feel sacred, you know what I mean? Because it feels invasive when a company comes in and no matter what the reason, it is the digital equivalent of them breaking into your house and deciding that they need to take your video game off your shelf because they decided that it is no longer a product they want to see out there because they wanted to see disappear from the face of the earth. Once you put it out there, that shouldn't be up to them. And for those who don't know, this whole Stop Killing Games movement started...
Like, is the whale big enough? It's not. Well, then we're just gonna freaking cut it off life support. It's like, you should not be able to do that. My other argument that I'd never think it'll come into fruition, I seriously wonder, okay, and I don't know a lot about these things. I really wonder how much it costs. Like, how much? Like, because it's like, oh, we got to please the shareholders, right? But it's, like, all under, like, confidentialities agreements, so you never know, like, how much these people are expecting, right? I don't feel like anything the shareholders ask for is public, right? I feel like they should have to make it public. I feel like we should crack down on that. Because I also feel like I wonder, you know, not that I don't think that, like, corpo people are out of touch or, like, greedy a lot of times, but I really wonder how much shareholders are, like, squeezing them, like, all or nothing. And it's like, I feel like we don't get to see that.
Because Ubisoft deleted the crew from players' libraries without...
Maybe as an MMO player, I come at it from a different perspective, but I think that the first time that I became aware of this being problematic was obviously with Classic WoW, but more importantly and more binary was WildStar.
Oh, man. No. I really liked WildStar.
Star is dead.
You put me in the feels,
totally
man.
Dead. Like, I'm pretty sure, like, maybe people are trying to make a private server for it now, but they shut down the servers entirely.
I was so sad.
So, like,
I was there on the last day the servers were up. Say goodbye to everyone. It was so tragic. Oh.
And I think that happened, like, in, I think, 2020 or something like that.
It was such a cute game,
and so
man.
It happened kind of recently. And that's when I first was like, I think this is a problem.
Without their consent, without their permission, the company's pulling licenses from paying customers now that the servers have shut down. This was an always online game for unnecessary reasons. They could have made it so that the online requirements aren't there and players are still allowed to access the basic bones of the crew, which even as a single player game, it can kind of work. But the fact that they just decided without refunds that this game is no longer a product that you're allowed to own, and even if you paid money for it, they can go in there and just strip that from you, was incredibly invasive.
It was.
And a lot of people felt the same, to the point where this Stop Killing Games movement gained the kind of traction that it did. I mean, this kind of signature...
Yeah. I think this is a great thing. I don't know. I don't blame WildStar at all. I don't feel like WildStar is this villain. I just feel like they literally just couldn't. They couldn't survive.
Your numbers is not something you see in all petitions. Clearly,
it is a crazy amount of people that have signed this so far. I actually think that's true. It's already over 350,000 people have signed this. 36.
If shareholders were public, they would be targeted by fans. How is that any different than the game devs being targeted by fans? How is that any different than the heat everyone else has to get from their decisions that they don't even have to publicly disclose? Yeah, why don't you get cooked alive the same? Why don't you have the balls to get cooked alive the same and be called unreasonable and criticized like everyone else? I feel like they're at fault at least the same amount, if not sometimes more. I'm just saying.
Nuts.
Nobody's looking at that. Nobody's even talking about that. I've had this opinion for a while, okay? But I feel kind of stupid talking about it because I am not as well informed as like Young. Yeah, I haven't been gaming as long as like Asmongold and all these other people. So I feel like I can't really talk about it a lot, but like it's the one thing that's annoyed me is I'm like, why is nobody talking about like why we should crack down on shareholders?
There are strong feelings about the idea of digital ownership.
Like they're so
Companies shouldn't be able to
problematic.
allow to have full control over the existence of digital content. If they want to take it off store shelves, fine, but the people who bought it should still be allowed to keep that content, and they shouldn't be able to just erase history when they feel like it. And then there was that major incident with PlayStation, which, yes, is a gaming company, but this particular incident involved the potential removal of digital movies from your library. People got this message saying, "Dear PlayStation customer, as of December 31st, 2023, due to our content licensing arrangements with content providers, you'll no longer be able to watch any of your previously purchased Discovery content, and the content will be removed from your video library."
So what I want to know is, did PlayStation decide this, or did the shareholders agree with PlayStation and they both shook hands on it? Because then I want to be mad at both. All right? I cook them evenly. You know, my fire is rated E for everyone. That's all.
2023, due to our content licensing arrangements with content providers, you'll no longer be able to watch any of your previously purchased Discovery content, and the content will be removed from your video library.
I think that if they do that, they have to give refunds. I do. I think that they have to give refunds if they do that. I mean, because
they're just changing the terms of service on the fly. Like, well, you can't do anything because you already purchased the game. So anything we do past this point, you know, you have to agree to, even if you don't like it.
Money for something, and they're taking it away from you. And that's not the only remedy, right? You could also, instead of that, you could maybe not give refunds, but you could allow people to download the file locally. So like, okay, well, we can't provide this to you through our system anymore, but we're going to give you this file so you can, you know, still have it yourself.
Yep.
You paid for use, not to own?
Yeah, I'm altering the deal. Pray I do not alter it further, exactly.
So the entire idea of ownership and usage and licensing, all of these things are constructs that are invented by humans. You don't really own anything.
Yep.
If somebody can come and just take it away from you, the government, like, you know, look at eminent domain. The government can just come and take it away from you. You don't own anything. The whole idea of ownership, private property, and everything, this is all a construct. So when I'm talking about redefining the way that we look at this construct, and then you say that ownership is what it is, that's fundamentally not true. Ownership is defined by people. And if it's defined by people, it can also be redefined by people.
That's a really good way to put it. Is that it depends on public opinion and what they define that as. And if everyone defines it differently than them, then they're being dishonest.
I'm saying that we should redefine it. It's that simple. Everything's a construct.
That person.
Not everything,
Those
but many
people.
things are. But yeah, that's the reason why. Agreed, I want it your way? Exactly, right?
Yes,
and so,
major shareholders
and this
said,
is a big
yes.
thing. It's like people might not really understand this, but yeah, private property isn't real. You don't have private property.
Yeah, that is 100% how I feel, right? That's why I said I can't even think of a time when I actually really physically own something, I feel.
No, like, if somebody can take something away from you, then you don't really own it. You don't own anything.
It wasn't until the backlash got so big and this drew so much attention as to be a potential legal liability for Sony and PlayStation that they decided to publish the following on December 21st, 2023. Due to updated licensing arrangements, the Discovery content removal planned for December 31st, 2023 is no longer
It's just
current.
not there anymore. Yoink. Product is gone. Just thought we'd update you and let you know. We set it on fire. Abracadabra. Goodbye.
We
Indefensible.
appreciate your ongoing support and feedback.
You see the bunny in the hat? You paid $50 for it, and it never came back out. Anyways, have a nice day.
So they backpedaled on this particular incident, but they didn't on a previous incident from July 8th, 2022, where the PlayStation Store removed purchased movies from libraries after service shutdown. More specific numbers can be found right here. The change affects 314 titles in Germany and 137 in Austria.
Ooh.
The reason Sony was able to get away with this incident was because this was done in a smaller market where this issue garnered less attention. But the
Yeah, and you bet this is like, I don't know. If I saw this, it's like, ooh, they're testing it smaller scale so they could get away with it larger scale later. Like, this is only the beginning. They're not going to just not do this any other time, okay?
That's the reason. I think that's a very good point. The reason why this has been allowed is because there isn't a lot of awareness for it.
Yep.
That's what Karl Marx. I can't. Well, I understand that a lot of people, like, there are a lot of people that are, like, of conservative and libertarian lean that place a very high moral premium on the idea of ownership. And I think that's misplaced. I think it's misplaced and it's misguided. Because if somebody can take something away from you, then I don't think that you really own it.
Yep.
And the government can take it away from you, and so you don't own it.
Yep. I agree.
Private property doesn't exist. The government tells you that it exists. And then everybody else agrees that it exists. To the extent that people decide that it doesn't exist, then it doesn't exist. That's it. It's literally that simple.
this incident
Yeah,
from
so
December
like the idea of owning something in the way that people think of it in their minds doesn't really, it's not, that definition doesn't work for a lot of things that we technically own, is what he's saying, and I agree with that.
2023, that affected people in the US and in major markets. And so now that people got wind of the dangers of an all-digital future and how companies can just
Now
do this
more
and
people are
were
seeing
made
it.
aware that such a possibility
Thank God.
exists, this is when this topic gained a lot of traction. I think stuff like this, combined with what happened with Ubisoft killing off the crew and removing that from players' libraries and Stop Killing Games, gained traction. Between all that, I think that's what caught legislators' eyes and had them engage in.
This will keep happening because more legislators, so like it's affecting more different types of media. Like I used, for example, like I bet a double-digit percentage of people that are working in Congress have Spotify.
Yeah, he's got a point. Like some of these things that it's affecting are now a lot more common than they were before, right? Like maybe these older people that are in Congress don't play video games that this affects, but they might have Spotify. That's a lot more likely. So when this is affecting their products and we say, hey, the same thing is happening to our games, now there is an understanding.
So they've probably experienced this themselves.
Yeah,
so
now
when
they get
that
it.
percentage gets high enough, when that percentage of people that are in Congress and working in government play video games, understand that. I doubt that. I think Spotify is insanely popular. No, of course they do.
I think he's onto something, even if it's not, right? Because this is about not just games. It's like every form of media. So it's like there has to be something, or it's a lot more likely they can resonate with the problems we're having if it's affecting them on any of the other media platforms they use.
The more that it happens, the more people will like try to stop it. Well, if they want to cancel their product, they have the right to. If you want to cancel a product, you have the right to canceling it. Well, let's think about this in a logical sense. So if you have a membership to something, and then they decide to take that membership away randomly, then you probably could get your money back and you could sue that company because you got scammed effectively, right?
Yes.
So I think that, again, what I'm talking about is redefining what that looks like and what that is.
Yep.
Like what the idea of ownership is in general. And I think that that's what has to happen. Why are you comparing songs you never bought? where you actually bought a membership to listen to. Buying a game and having it removed is 100% different. You're right, and having the game removed is 10 times worse than the Spotify thing.
Yes, he is 100% right. Like, they're not the same. Having a game removed is so much more detrimental, not even close to having a song removed.
You actually bring up a really good point.
Yes.
And I think Spotify is actually the weakest argument that I have, but I think it's also one that a lot of people have experienced.
Yeah, so what he's doing, I think, in my opinion, is he's trying to get people to understand because everyone knows what Spotify is. Like, so many people, if you ask them what is Spotify, they know what that is. Does that make sense? He's using something that is more universal to everyone else as an example, even though it's not a perfect one. And I think that's the sentiment he's going for. He's trying to use something that everyone can have like a common ground with, and that's what he's going for, I think.
So like the buying the movies that you're no longer able to access, that you can't access the games, I think those are much stronger arguments than what I'm using with Spotify. But what I'm saying is that Spotify and other things like the movies have a larger audience than just video games. And
Yep.
once that audience, enough people are interfacing with that, because you're seeing more and more content. I'm not crazy. Everybody has seen this, right? How we're seeing more and more content turn into a subscription, more and more content turn into a license rather than ownership.
Yep.
So as that happens, of course, more people in society are going to be aware of it. And so once that hits a critical mass, then you can enact legislation that people can understand in order to solve the problem.
Yeah.
And the first step to that is making people aware of the problem. And that's why the legislation in California is a very good thing.
Yep. So I think even if, like, Spotify is a weak argument, it might unironically be a lot of people's first introduction to understanding the difference between, you know, owning something when they had a CD and owning something on Spotify, and or feeling like they owned it, right? And then seeing that song get grayed out. That might be their first experience of realizing, hey, I don't own this. And I think that's very important.
Plans to put out legislation that is now legitimate, that has been signed. There's a bill now that is going to come into effect in 2025 that isn't the be-all, end-all solution, but is a good first step to at least putting a spotlight on the issue and putting pressure on companies. Also worth noting is that Sony was involved in this incident involving Crunchyroll and Funimation.
Oh, man, I remember this. I watched stuff on Funimation. I freaking hated this.
All that Funimation was kind of fused into Crunchyroll, and Funimation itself was shut down. And so when asked what was going to happen to digital copies from Funimation account holders, it was stated right here that Crunchyroll does not support Funimation digital copies, which means that access to previously available digital...
What's going to happen to
Yeah,
my
this
digital
sucked.
copies?
They didn't even take the whole library, okay? So, like, some of the old stuff that you liked over there, they're like, yeah, no, we're not. Yeah, that's just not going to be here. And there was also this weird time, I can't remember exactly what it said, but it was like, by the way, we're not going to have, like, new episodes or anything here, and we're going to be, like, merging over there, so, like, you need to cancel your subscription over here and buy one over there. But it didn't, like, cancel your subscription on Funimation, so, like, a lot of people... We're still, like, subscribing monthly to Funimation, but now not getting the product, or accidentally subscribing to both. And it was like, it was such a like stupid thing that it was like they didn't shut down one before they required subscription from the other. Like, they did not have like a smooth transition. It was awful.
They're gone, bitch. Yeah, I can translate that real quick.
Yeah, pretty
copies
much.
will not
Pretty
be
simple.
supported, which is something that garnered a lot of backlash and is just utter
Oh,
bullshit.
right. Yeah, the
And
mangas disappeared too. It was like, geez.
once again, a cautionary tale about this idea of an all-digital future and companies pushing for that and us allowing it. This stuff's happening more and more, and it's become frequent enough and concerning enough that I cannot disagree with this quote that garnered a lot of approval. If paying isn't owning, piracy isn't stealing. This right here on Twitter alone garnered...
That's not completely correct if you really want to get into semantics, but it creates a common ground that's very compelling.
over
They have a point.
144,000 likes. Over
Yeah,
five.
I do think this take is stupid. I think it's a stupid
it's
take because, of course,
oversimplification.
piracy
But it's very...
stealing isn't piracy.
It's
They're
on
two
point.
very different things. However, I think that the feeling behind it is incredibly valid.
Yep.
5.3 million views. that many share. I mean, yeah, if this is how you want to play companies, then I guess piracy isn't stealing. If people found a way to pirate the crew and get it back up and running with their own private servers after you pulled that bullshit move, Ubisoft, where you took the game away from people's libraries without their permission, them doing all that I don't think is morally incorrect. I mean, if anything, you're encouraging for people to engage in that kind of activity. I'll close this video off by
like, I mean, it's clearly not, like, there's no moral evil that's being committed if they take a game away from you that you paid money for and then you're playing it in a pirated way.
And the thing is, right, is that the sad thing is a lot of things, like if we talk about like Nintendo, people are perfectly willing to buy these games, but they don't provide them. And so it's like, why are they getting punished for that? They would buy more from you. People love your games. That's why they're emulating them, because people love them. It's just, it's a weird sentiment, right?
You've done nothing wrong ethically, in my opinion.
Once again, highlighting this video where Christopher Nolan talks about the importance of physical media and nails it on the head in regards to the dangers of an all-digital future. Here's what he had to say.
Buy a 4K UHD, you buy a Blu-ray, it's on your shelf, it's yours. No company, you know, is going to break into your house and take it from you and repossess it. You know, it's yours and you own it. That's never really the case with any form of digital distribution.
Could you imagine if like what it would actually look like today if the stuff that you physically owned back in the day was like repossessed? It's like your CDs you have, the company just comes in and like their suits and they're like, yeah, we decided to change our user agreement. You're gonna have to hand over the CDs now. Hand them over, bucko.
Relying on the continued health of the supplier, the company.
We heard you got some CDs in here.
Yeah, I mean, even huge names like Christopher Nolan
Hand them
recognize
over.
the dangers of an all-digital future, and it's something that he wants to avoid at all costs because as a filmmaker and as a film buff,
I'm perfectly willing to pay a subscription to a streaming service for a game. But when only one game in a 4-game series is on one platform,
yes, that
the
sucks.
second game is on another platform,
yes.
and the last 2 games aren't on any platforms except in pirate sites, and that pirate site has all the games, then why spend the money in the first place?
Exactly. They should give you a discount. If it's $10 and you only get a third of the content, then maybe you only have to pay a third of the price. Yeah, it's like, what the heck? It's like you gotta go adventuring around to find if a place even has the whole thing. You know, it's like it happens with like anime too. It's like, I guess there's only season 3. I don't know what happens before that. Like, what the?
He knows what it's like to have that feeling of pure ownership over a medium that, you know, for him as an artist is sacred. And
you're hoarding CDs under the floorboards, aren't you?
To ensure that everything he buys is something that is not corporately controlled, an artwork that he can continue to access, like a painting up on a wall. You know what I mean? If it's something that moves you, you know, it shouldn't be something that a company can come in and strip away from you and remove from your wall. It should just be something that you can be secure.
It's like, imagine like you have a Picasso painting or something like that, and like you walk in, you know, one day, and then like the painting's been replaced by a picture of a bored ape. And it's like, yeah, the company, you know, they're trying to push this NFT thing, so they're getting rid of all the Picassos, they're replacing them with bored apes.
Yeah, you already bought it. We're just changing our product entirely, and you don't really get anything to, you know, you have no control over this, so.
So we did this while you were asleep at night, and so yeah, this is, like, yeah, it sounds pretty fucking stupid, huh? Sounds really fucking dumb. Yeah,
in fully knowing that it will always be there as long as you
didn't read the small print,
protect it and you cherish it. The fact that legislators are at least aware enough to start making some moves, that's an encouraging sign. I still feel like we need to do more. Stop Killing Games has the right idea of what legislators need to be encouraged to do and what they need to be encouraged to stop companies from doing. But alas, I'll take any victories right now, and hopefully this can be expanded upon further in the future. In the meantime, though, let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on this legislation and how you think legislators should handle this whole idea of an all-digital future and the kinds of legislations they should put into play. And to be further updated on all things,
I think in a perfect world, the shareholders have to disclose the agreement.
Imagine they replace your Rosie poster with a picture of Rosie in a moustache update.
No, not
and
the
you can never have the
moustache.
original Rosie poster
No, wait, chat
again.
might like that.
This is what it would look like for physical media manipulation.
This is DLC. The DLC has the mustache. Ooh, baby.
Gaming news, reviews, and discussions. Stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.
I completely fucking agree with everything that he said. And I actually think that like people joke around and talk shit about California all the time.
Yeah. This is
I
like
think it's
the
just
one time that California has a W. We got to give it to them.
justified. But this is a California W. Because I think the first step to solving a problem is making people aware of what the problem is.
Yep.
And I think this is what that does. It makes people
Mainstream clampdown on media overall is a good sign.
aware that when they're buying something, they don't actually own it. And I think in the process of that, it's going to make people second guess that. And also, it's going to create a...
As a non-American, what's the deal with California? Oh, God. There's no way to explain that simply.
like a value differentiator for companies that give you the actual product that you have ownership of, like GOG, for example, versus something like Steam or Epic Games Store where you don't have that. So I think this is a huge fucking positive. I'm very happy about this. I feel like California has some of the best worker and citizen protection laws against corporations. California does a lot of things really well. It does some other things not so well.
Yes.
But this is one of the things that I think they're doing well, and I'm really glad to see that.
We got to give them a W here.
I think other states will follow this.
Because if... Let me put it this way. California is the center of where a lot of bad things are passed legislative-wise, and a lot of bad ideas. So if even California acknowledges this is a problem, then it's going to be really hard for them to defend it.
I do. And so a really good example of that is the way that it's the way that porn sites have gotten blocked. I feel like we've seen so many porn sites
I was not expecting that segue, Asmund.
get blocked recently without age verification. And I think that's what's going to happen even more. So, like, that's an example. And I think also this problem is something that the more people know about it, the more people will be upset about it and want to not have it.
I agree.
So, or want to have it fixed.
I don't really understand the
basically,
porn
as soon
connection,
as you
but
see one state doing it, other states are going to be like, that sounds like a good idea. And it was received well here because you look at it from a politician's perspective.
that was a left turn. I think it was a turn about 69 degrees. Specifically,
I mean, like, you want to pass legislation that people, think are, this is like you looking out for them, right? Like, obviously, it's an easy win. Well, it not only is an easy win, it's something that has a proven record of success in other places that I think an average person would agree with.
Yep.
So
Yep. He's absolutely right.
Yeah, positive sentiment legislation. So like, there's a big reason for that. Why wouldn't a senator want to do this? Like,
Exactly.
not only is it, in my opinion, the ethical good decision, but also people will view it as a moral good as well.
It's just an easy W for them to take. It's an extremely easy W for them to just pick up here.
In TOS update they pushed last week.
There's very little downsides for them at all to take this. They just look very favorable to the people.
I thought the same thing, but no. It actually was the result of a separate lawsuit being, resolved in one way or another.
Oh,
and
okay.
That's why they did it. The average person does not care. I actually think that so the reason why an average person doesn't care is
the reason an average person doesn't care is because they don't understand it.
Because it doesn't affect them. But the problem is that, like, everybody here, how many of you guys have DVD collections? Who here has a DVD collection?
The second that this lands on something that a lot of people are familiar with, if the legislation goes through, the more they're going to care about it.
A lot of people, right? I used to, not anymore, right? Yeah, a lot of people. Every single person has had this experience, basically, of the idea of owning things.
Yep.
And I think that the more that people are aware that you're not owning things in this other new, licensing system, I think the more people will push back against it.
Yep,
That's
he's
what I think
right.
is going to happen. The digital media shouldn't be the same price as physical media. Well, I think and this is the thing, right? Is like the fact that a license and buying is considered the same thing.
Yep.
Think about that and what the psychology for that is in the mind of a consumer.
Yep. He's 100% right. Like a lot of these things just being synonymous when they really aren't synonymous is so bad.
And you see how legislation can promote consumer awareness and it can cause the market to hopefully self-correct. And so hopefully that's what happens. Since large companies like Sony say buying is no longer owning, then piracy is no longer theft, because even if you buy it, you don't own it. Owning means it's yours to an extent, and you should keep a certain form of access should it go down or get sold off to another company. Very true. If a license is revoked, I should be paid back.
Yep.
Absolutely.
That is 100% true.
Abso-fucking-lutely.
I also think one thing that wasn't really mentioned in here, I think that the reason it's happening now rather than any other time is that consumers have less money. So I think that this, like these companies are doing this more and more because there isn't anything in place that stops them. So they see one person, go over this line and get away with it, and then more and more do it, right? And also, that's compiled with the fact that the average consumer has less money to pay. So like when they see these things happen, they're even more devastated. And I think that's kind of what was the last straw that made this happen.
I completely agree. So why the hell are we paying full price for something we don't really own?
Exactly.
As I said, the first step is awareness.
Yeah, and I think that's why like more people are asking these questions too. Overall, this is good. I think this is a great thing. Huge
there
W.
You go. And I think it's going to happen, and it's going to be more and more popular the more people start seeing it and see what the problem with it is. So I'm very happy to see this, and I hope it continues.
Yep, same here. I'm extremely happy, and I hope like this is just the first step of like legislation that comes in and says that this isn't okay. Yep, huge W. Huge W. Very good and informative video. Yes, this is from, this is obviously Asmin. He's reacting to Yong Ya, though. Make sure you guys give Yong Ya a follow. W for win, L for loss. This is a W.